inspired you to write this, to actually say, I'm going to do this?
I wanted to help people go through an experience that I went through. In particular, I was struggling as I was approaching my 40th birthday. I was going through what I like to call an early onset midlife crisis. And that's why I've geared it towards why I have midlife awakening right in the subtitle, is because I feel like there's something about that midlife period that brings about these struggles that people go through. So to answer your question, though, what led me to write this is because I went through those typical struggles during this midlife period, and I discovered a breakthrough. And I want to help people going through those midlife struggles. It's a universal rite of passage. It's something that everyone goes through, and midlife is the only stage of life that has this word crisis attached to it. That's not a coincidence, and it's more than just a cliche. It's because it's a universal stage of life that we go through. I went through it. I'm still midlife, if you will. It's been 5.5 years since then. But the breakthrough I had, I really feel like can help people who are going through similar problems, people who are in their 40s and 50s.
Wow, 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 wow. So this is part of what you do, right? You're an author, and you're also a coach. How did these two come together?
Well, I started off as a certified life coach. Part of the awakening process that I went through involved wanting to help others who were going through the sort of things that I was going through. And I started looking into life coaching. Somebody had suggested that to me, actually, was, have you thought about becoming a life coach? Because the experience that you have gone through, you can help other people going through something similar to that. So obviously that's how I know you, Karen, is because you also are a certified life coach. I, did some Google searching, looked around, and found a really good life coaching academy that I joined with the idea of helping others go through their awakenings. People are ready to wake up. It's happening all around us. We're all waking up right now. It's part of this moment in history, I think, where it's like this great awakening is happening for a lot of people. And so I became a life coach to help others with that. And it was just a natural progression to start writing a book as well. And it's basically the foundation of my, what I believe, what I've gone through, and the ways that I can help others.
It's funny because you say natural progression, and I'm thinking of myself and the people I talk to. And it is a natural progression to have the desire, but to actually have the commitment, the dedication, and the persistence, it requires a lot. So Susan here is like on the same path as you.
Awesome.
Definite collaborator, somebody that you guys should definitely talk. She's written a book. It's on Amazon, and same mission, she says.
Oh, that's great.
Oh my God. Sending you hugs and kisses. Awesome. Love it. Love Igniters coming together. So there is a moment, right? There's this natural progression. I feel the calling to put it all in writing and share it, birth this creation. Do you remember that sweet moment of commitment? Yes, I'm going to jump. I'm going to do this. Can you share with me?
I do. It was the winter. It was getting to be the holiday season of 2015. So it was almost 3 years ago now. And something clicked. I just realized that it was time to write a book. And I had a chance meeting. And this happens a lot during our awakening journeys. We have these chance meetings with people. And I met somebody who is a book writing coach and advisor, somebody who helps people write books. She has written a few books herself, and she asked me, do you have a book in you? And I was just starting to get sort of the idea for one at that time, and it sort of brought it home for me. I'm like, yeah, I do have a book in me. There is a book I want to write. And that started it. It was almost like you see the truth and you're ready to follow it. So
Mhm.
that began, and I essentially, over the next year, year and a half or so, I wrote that book. But then I decided to change it up a little bit. The book I ultimately wrote wasn't the book that I really wanted to put out into the world. Or shall I say, it was two books that I wanted to put out into the world. That was the thing. It was so big that I realized I had to split it in half. Otherwise, it was just going to be one of these huge books that people love to see on their bookshelf, but feels so heavy and so intimidating to actually read it. So I split it in two. And, you know, long story short, 3 years later, I'm finally publishing it now.
I just love it. I love it how when we start something, we discover strengths and talents that maybe we kind of had a glimpse were there, but we're not 100% sure. We start the journey and then you discover you don't just have one book in you, you have two, and probably you have a whole like Star Wars sequence that goes back and forth through time, because it's like you've opened this endless fountain. Freaking amazing. So Susan says synchronicity for sure. Yes.
That's one of the subjects I cover in the book, because when we talk about an awakening, there are 4 stages that I talk about in the book. And one of the stages, stage 2, what I call the descent ascent. The descent into our consciousness, into our own heart space, into our own intuition, leads to a great ascent of awareness and understanding. During that second stage is where a lot of freaky stuff starts to happen, and we experience a lot of synchronicities and chance meetings, signs from the universe, confirmations that we're on the right track. That's that really delicious magic stuff that people go through, that some people say you've just kind of gone crazy, but the reality is it's the best kind of crazy you can go through, because you are getting these signs that you're doing the right thing and that you are waking up. So yeah, synchronicity is one of the things that I do discuss in Rise and Shine.
I love it. Love it. So we could call her Jamie, or we could call her or him anything you want. She's going through her life, experiencing what right now?
The person that I'm looking to help she's probably somewhere in her 40s or her 50s. Although, to be honest, you can have an awakening at any age. Not children so much, but I mean almost any adult age. It's just the time we're ripe for the awakening is midlife. So let's say Jamie is, in her 40s or her 50s, and she just senses very strongly that there's more to herself and her life than what she's currently experiencing. That is what I just could not get over, is the fact that my life was really quite good by any measure. I had a decent job, a real good marriage. We lived in a nice home. We had our health. I had all these things that I had gratitude for, and I knew these were really great things. But I felt a little shame almost that I didn't feel almost more gratitude for it, because I sensed there was something more. There was something greater that I was missing out on. And this
might describe it. The way Susan said it, it might describe it. Sorry for the interruption. She said, I was asked if I was in a cult or going through a midlife crisis. I just say I'm awake now. I'm happy. So true. I could so relate to that.
Yeah, I can as well. The midlife crisis causes people to do some pretty weird stuff. And so does awakening. And this is an important point that I want to mention, is when you're going through an awakening, you might commit some pretty strange things. But the difference between a midlife crisis and an awakening is the fact that midlife crisis, crazy acts, things like having an affair or quitting your job, or making some kind of extravagant purchases, or getting some big tattoo that's really kind of funny looking, right? If it's a midlife crisis, there's a good chance that these are acts of desperation. We're doing this because we sense that there's something more that we are missing out on, and we act out in a sense. If we do these things during an awakening, okay? It's a reaction to the fact that we have accessed our inner source of light. That deep source of truth, wisdom, and love inside of us can also open our eyes like they've never been opened before. We access our heart space like we've never done before. And then these can also lead us to do some pretty strange things. And so that is why I wanted to write a guide for a midlife awakening, because I want to help people who, first of all, want to have an awakening, but then also want to navigate it in a safe way so that they don't, I hate to say it, but they don't get too carried away with the things that are going on inside of them. We want to embrace the awakening, but we also don't want to completely throw our lives away. And that's something that I try to help people with.
Yeah, because it sounded, the first one you were describing, it sounded like a terrible twos tantrum.
That's a good point. Yeah, it is almost like an acting out, like a tantrum that people have. And think about people in their 40s and 50s. And big hug to you, Susan. I see your message there, a virtual hug back to you. But yeah, I mean,
and she has a phoenix tattoo on her back.
Yeah, I've got a big tattoo on my back too. And I got it while I was going through my awakening. Because
I want a phoenix one. I'm getting a phoenix one, Susan. I'm going to copy you.
Awesome. Yeah. See, it's funny that it's a subtle difference between the midlife crisis and the awakening. They're such a natural, they're almost two sides of the same coin. One is the desperate need for something else, and the other is discovering it and being absolutely gobsmacked by it. I want to help people have that gobsmacking experience of accessing the source within them, but that's going to bring about some challenges to life. It's going to make us want to say yes, 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 yes to a lot of things, because up to midlife, we've learned how to say no, 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 no.
Of course. Follow the rules, do what you're supposed to do, and just contain it and repress it. And it doesn't matter how you feel, you have to do for others and help others. So now it's like a big blown off tantrum.
Yeah, yeah.
That you're offering some guidance for, because it could be a force that, if it's not properly directed, it's a very creative and powerful force that when it is directed, it can lead to amazing things.
That's right. That's right.
Totally. Not selfish to be selfish. We're on the same page. We have aligned each other perfectly, right?
I'm with you, Susan. Yeah, I hear you.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So Jamie was feeling this way and she read the book. What happened?
She made a few subtle tweaks to her lifestyle, which started her awakening. And I cover that ground right out of the gate in the very first chapter. The first chapter is called Getting Started on the Path. Because the awakening experience is very much a feeling of being on a path. And I still remember clearly the moment I had where I realized this feeling that I was on a path, a journey of my life. So in Jamie's case, she's going to make a few subtle changes to her life. I do not recommend, and this is what you find in a lot of self-help books, is making huge changes to your diet or your lifestyle. I recommend not making big changes to your lifestyle. It's more subtle tweaks. You almost want to ease into the awakening and allow it to occur, as opposed to forcing big things to happen, which honestly don't work and don't bring long-lasting results. So the kind of things that Jamie might do is she might spend a little bit less time in front of the boob tube and a little less time scrolling through her Facebook feed. There's nothing wrong with television or social media or watching political news. Here we're talking on election day. It's kind of funny, but there's nothing wrong with having these things as part of our lives. But what tends to happen for people who are experiencing a midlife awakening is they overinvest in these things. They tend to get addicted to social media or television, or they obsess over the daily news cycle. And I'm not putting anyone down. I know this because I've been there. I've done these things.
We all do it.
Yeah.
Things, we all go through it, and and experience it. So we're trying to fill a void in a way.
That's right. That's right. It's the void. And that's also what leads people in the midlife crisis to act out, like you say, sort of having that terrible twos reaction. It's because they're in their 40s and they realize, really, this is my life, this is my career, this is my family. And they may like their job, they may love their family and their kids. I hope they do. But at the same time, there's this sense of, is this really all there is? I come back, there's a quote from Tom Hanks, one of my favorite actors. He's got a quote about the midlife crisis, and he says, it's the disaster where you wake up, you realize you have everything you ever wanted, and it's not enough. And that's what leads people to do lots of kind of crazy things. And this is the time to wake up to what's inside of you. And so Jamie, after she reads the book, she's going to do those little things to discover that source she has within her, and she's going to cultivate a relationship with it. Not forcing things, not doing big things, doing little things steadily each and every day, and just allow for the awakening to happen. If you allow for it to happen, it will. Just be patient and stay present in your life.
And that's what Susan's saying, slow and steady.
Exactly.
So Jamie, obviously it's the book, it's the journey. A lot of the things contribute. She might reach out and she might want private sessions with you and a whole transformation to expand deeper in her transformational journey, right? At the end, I get a sense she's feeling, well, and I know because I've worked with you, you've been my coach, so I know connecting with myself and in my spiritual journey and with the tarot and all the things that you bring to it has really helped me go through my midlife crisis and currently my divorce, which is an acting out type of thing of the midlife crisis, in a way where people look at me and say, no, you're not going through a divorce. It can't be. Like, you look way too happy or too okay with it. And I guess you can go through it in many different ways, but this is like a channeling, a way to channel that energy and that emotion in a more healthy, positive way. So I get a sense at the end, like I felt it, and like Susan said she felt it, she's awake and happy. That's what Jamie is feeling when she goes through the book, the process, and whatever it awakens in her. Am I on the right page?
You absolutely are, and you bring up a couple of really good points that I want to remind anybody out there watching this. And one is that starting your awakening does begin with slow actions, but you are building to a place where you can make really big changes in your life. I just don't recommend doing that right away. Start slow and build up to that place, because once you discover and access the source of truth, wisdom, and love that you have inside of you, you will be empowered to make huge changes to your life. But they will be done so from a very powerful space, a spiritual space, mindfully and carefully. And that's probably the single biggest thing that differentiates people acting out from a midlife crisis. For example, having a divorce because you're just fed up and you just decide you're done, versus going through a divorce while also awakening, which means doing so from a place of a quiet mental space of understanding, mindfulness, careful action. And I talk a lot about this in the book. This is a huge part of my book, is this idea of transforming yourself and transforming your life and making these kind of big changes and big decisions, but doing so in a way that's in alignment with who you really are and not acting out. Because as you know, you could have had a divorce at another time, but I know you, Karen, and you're handling it extremely well. Like you say, that's something that you hear from other people. It's because you're handling it in such a remarkably healthy and mindful way. And unfortunately, a lot of people do not go through divorces that way.
Yeah, it's tough. All the big life changes are super, super hard. And
sure.
our level of awareness really affects. I know it's like there's a lot to talk about because it's a lot that you cover in the book, right? And it's life changing. So first of all, where is it available? Where can people get it?
Good question, and thank you. It's available on Amazon.com. I have a link, I have a specific website set up with more information about the book itself, book description, exclusive excerpts from the book, so you can kind of read my language and see if it resonates with you. And I also have an extended review on there that has been provided by somebody who I very much like, respect, and trust, that somebody can read an extended review of the book. So that website is riseandshineguide.com, www.riseandshineguide.com. And there's a link to purchase the book on that website. You can also access it through Amazon, of course. Just look for Rise and Shine Guide. I didn't realize there were so many books titled Rise and Shine out there, so you might have to look a little bit for it. Make sure it's this one, Rise and Shine by Frank Kwiatkowski, and not one of the 40 other books called Rise and Shine out there. But it's available in paperback or ebook. It's $16.95 for the paperback and only $9.95 for the ebook. It's also available through places like Barnes & Noble, and other ebook places like Apple iBooks. You can find it in those sources as well.
Excellent. So I know that you probably have many messages in the book that you feel deeply connected to, but if you had to share one, speaking to people that are now, right, in the depth of it, in the challenge, what would you say?
I would say that you have a source of deep love and wisdom and truth inside of you right now. And the difficulties that you're going through right now doesn't mean it's not there. It just means that you're not connected with it right now. And there are things that you can do to connect to that source. That source I refer to oftentimes in the book as your essential self, because it's right within your essence. It's at your core. And it is what some people would call your soul or your higher self. But those who read my book will come to appreciate the term essential self. It is within you. It is calling to you. There are things you can do to access it and cultivate a relationship with it. And when you do, a lot of these struggles that you're going through in life, a lot of the problems that you're having, the solutions will reveal themselves to you. And you will be able to get connected with your heart space and your sense of purpose in life again. I've been where you are. I've been through those struggles. And I'm blessed to have discovered that all that looking outside of myself, TV, news, social media, government leaders, religious leaders, all these people trying to tell us the deeper truth of the world, that will never suffice compared to what you can find within yourself. That's the message I would leave people with.
It's huge because it's super soothing. It's super soothing. I was relating to the time when it was the hardest in my life, and I was young at that time, right? In my teens. You're getting a lot of hearts from Susan, and
thank you.
I would send hearts in my teens, and I would say, yeah, I felt like I was abandoned in a way, that God, where's God? You know, I never thought of the possibility of looking within myself for that source of connection. I thought I was abandoned by this outside force. So it's huge. There are a lot of us, a lot of people that may feel abandoned and mad or upset. So to hear that message is extremely powerful and soothing. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have for anyone out there who's going through that, I have a lot of empathy for those people, and in particular because I've been there. And that was a tough period in my life. Everybody goes through some version of this. And believe it or not, and don't take this the wrong way, because when somebody says, oh, the pains you're going through is such a wonderful opportunity for growth, because usually when you're in that, that's not exactly the message you want to hear. But it is true. This really is a huge opportunity. All that pain and frustrations that I went through around the age of 40, and plenty in my life before that. We won't even talk about my 20s. That can be the subject of another interview maybe, but
another book.
Yeah, maybe another book, exactly. But the point is, that pain that we go through in midlife, it's suffering. It's suffering. Yeah. And it's the suffering that brings wonderful blessings and gifts on the other side of it. So you are being called home, in a sense. You're being called to discover your inner divinity. We're taught, a lot of us are taught in various religions to look to the sky for God, or whatever our higher power is, to look out there. And very, very infrequently in my experience are we taught that it's inside of us. It's within our very essence. And that's where it's found. That's where it's found.
And this is a roadmap, guide, and handheld opportunity to explore it, which I feel is fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah.